Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, the Toronto Maple Leafs have re-signed defenseman Morgan Rielly for $7.5 million a season for the next 8 years after this one. $7.5 million a season for Morgan Rielly would make him the 18th highest paid defenseman in the NHL. $7.5 million and 8 years, the more important part, is a lot of money for an offensive defenseman who relies upon his skating like Morgan Rielly. But when you look at the amount of money that was handed to defensemen this summer, and you consider what Morgan Rielly could have gotten on the open market, and then you consider that the Maple Leafs were sort of past the point of being able to trade this player and having it make sense right now. They're in the middle of the season. The time to trade him was in the offseason. Morgan Rielly will be 28 years old when this contract comes into effect. Maybe we're not so worried about the first 4 years of it because he'll be 32 after the first 4 years are over. But what about the last 4 years? Because that takes him from age 33 up until he's 36. Because if you're taking a look at the number of active defensemen who are in the league who are 33 years and up making at least $6 million, there's only 6 of them. Johnny Boychuk, Brent Seabrook, and Shea Weber are all on basically LTIR retirement. In terms of an offensive defenseman who uses his skating a lot, looking at this list, can Morgan Rielly maybe be a Chris Letang? Can he be a Mark Giordano even? I know that Giordano's also really good defensively, but he also had a high output in terms of the number of points that he scored later on in his career. And if he is able to produce like those guys as he ages, then I don't think that the Maple Leafs have anything to worry about when it comes to this contract. But at the same time, those are just the best case scenarios. Because if we shorten the list of defenders who are age 35 and up making $6 million, it's basically just Brent Burns and Mark Giordano. But the counter to that is that in years 6, 7, and 8 of this deal, hopefully by then, the salary cap would have bounced back to a point where you're not feeling the effects of it so much. And if he's able to be something along the lines of a Giordano or a Chris Letang, maybe he's not worth $7.5 million anymore, but maybe he's worth 5 or 6 of that original cap hit at that point. So maybe it evens out. When you're looking at Morgan Rielly, he was legitimately their best defenseman in that series against the Montreal Canadiens. This is not a guy who folds like the rest of the team did. He's a guy who elevates his game and does what he needs to do to get it done. You may be frustrated with Morgan Rielly at times because of his defensive play and because of his lack of a shot on the power play. But when it comes to his game in transition and generating offense, especially opportunities in the slot, there's almost nobody better in the NHL, and he does that against the other team's best players in very, very heavy minutes. If you're looking for the details on the contract, the money is basically all in the first 4 years, and in years 5 through 8, it dips down considerably, but there is a no movement clause that starts immediately, and then in the final 2 years, it dips down to a 10-team no trade list. And it's interesting that it's structured like that, because right now, currently, after this season, the Maple Leafs don't have anybody on the books for 4 years from that. So that means that the Toronto Maple Leafs will have Morgan Rielly's $7.5 million cap hit on the books when it's time to renegotiate contracts like Matthews, Tavares, Marner, and Nylander. But the flip side to that is that Jake Muzzin and TJ Brodie, presumably because of their age, will more than likely not be on the team anymore. And last year, moving into this year, I think that there was a legitimate part of the fan base that wanted to see Morgan Rielly moved because you can get a boatload of assets for him, but that would also open up an opportunity for Rasmus Sandin to play a lot more. And I've loved Rasmus Sandin and the skill that he showed so far, and especially what him and Travis Dermott have been able to do together this year. Even though that is in softer, more sheltered minutes, that is a step in the right direction for those two guys who are looking to make a push in their development. I think that 7-game series against the Montreal Canadiens threw the possibility of Rasmus Sandin replacing Morgan Rielly as early as this year right out the window for me. He looked overmatched and just not ready. He didn't have a good series at all. I know he scored a goal on the power play, with his shot, and that's something that Leaf fans want to see more from Morgan Rielly. But at the same time, there's very few defensemen in the league that log more minutes and tougher assignments than Morgan Rielly does. And I just don't think it would be fair to everyone really involved in that situation to expect that from Rasmus this early on in his career and his development. I know that the early season struggles of Jake Muzzin and Justin Holl is really making a lot of Leaf fans panic, but at the same time, maybe that's an opportunity for Rasmus Sandin and Travis Dermott to steal some of those assignments away from those guys and get more of an opportunity and prove that they can do it in tougher assignments. And if that can be the case, I would really, really love and appreciate that. Having someone step up from an outside role to fill a need is something that this team has desperately needed for the last couple of years and has not gotten basically anywhere other than maybe Jack Campbell, who is not on this armchair GM if you've been looking at it, because this is what the team could possibly look like next season with the contracts that are currently on the books. And there is a rumor and a real chance that the salary cap could go up from $81.5 million to $82.5 million. And you may laugh at that $1 million, but if you're looking at the salary cap situation that the Leafs are in right now and several other teams around the league, $1 million would really go a long way. So to possibly have $7.2 million to re-sign Rasmus Sandin, Jack Campbell, and fill out the rest of the roster, the Maple Leafs may be a bit stretched again next year, but that is without also moving any of the guys who are currently here. And that's dependent, obviously, on the outcome of the season. But regardless of that, you could see a guy like Kerfoot moved. You could see a guy like Justin Holl moved. Maybe even both of them. Those are options that the team has. And hopefully you could fill a couple of holes with guys from the Toronto Marlies or from their system. Because that's something that the Maple Leafs haven't had or been able to rely upon for the last couple of years. And it's forced them to dive too deep into the dumpster come free agency. You know, if you just kind of skim the top, you may come up with a Michael Bunting, a David Kampf, and an Andre Kasha. And hey, so far those guys have looked really great. But if you're forced to dive too deep into there, you may come up with one too many aging veterans and a guy who you hoped could have an impact in the middle of your lineup, but is now on your fourth line. For myself, I can relax a little bit in terms of the dollar amount because he would have probably gotten more on the open market just going off of the contracts that were signed this past offseason. I fully understand the worry when it comes to the term, and that was always going to be it with him. But at the same time, when I watch this team, when I cheer for this team, when I look up and down the roster at who I can relate to and identify with, it's Mo. It's always been Mo. And watching him play, watching the All or Nothing series and seeing how he elevates his game when everyone else folds, that's something that I want more of on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Definitely not less. So I am happy to have Morgan Rielly on this team for the next 8 years because he is someone who I can identify and relate with on this team, and I just don't think that there are very many players who you can do that with right now. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like, and to subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And like I said, I'm happy. I'm happy that Morgan Rielly is going to be here for the next 8 years. Now, go out there and win.